Okay, so I'm not too sure what I'm going to talk about today, but I'm going to go ahead and just, again, try this out, see what happens. Some of the things that a lot of people had asked me about was, when I was younger and my dad had, like I mentioned before, it started a cult and there was all the abuse going on. Like, how did I hang in there? Like, how did I make it through that? And I guess to fully explain it, I probably need to tell you more of the story. But honestly, there's not anything definitive to say it was something or someone. All I know is that without God's presence in my life, I would have killed myself at 13 years old. I had contemplated the decision. I was hurting myself. I was just wondering if I wanted to suffer the consequences from that. I knew I had it in me. I knew I was very capable of doing it. And at that moment, at 13, where I had this pivotal point, because I guess we can just start there. That seems fair to me. That I had that pivotal moment where I'm like, oh my God, like, why am I alive? All these things that have happened, I can't control any of them. Now that they're done, I can't undo anything that I've done, or I can't go backwards and take back anything that's been done to me. And so I really had to find something to live for. I had to find something that for me was worth fighting for, which is totally not like me, because I'm a straight fighter. You have to be, in order to survive, you have to be. And in essence, in those moments, in that time frame that I'm in the bathroom that's shared by, the majority of the house, and nobody's coming to knock on the door, and everybody knows that I'm in there, and nobody has to use the restroom, and it was really a dark place for me, because why did anybody want to know if I was okay? Why did anybody want to know what was going on? But I did have, kind of a very unruly way about myself. So I think everybody was just kind of enjoying the idea that I was just away and, not messing or doing anything else. I don't know really. I wasn't a bad kid. I took the responsibilities of the house, but you could just tell I wasn't happy, and I didn't know how to express something that I didn't have. So all I really had was what was in me, which wasn't good, which is why I'm in the bathroom bleeding out, and nobody even is checking up on me or is concerned. But at that moment, when and I had nosebleeds too, so I was bleeding from my nose, I was bleeding all over my wrists. It was a mess. But at that moment that, I'm pacing, and I'm like, Leia, what are you going to do? Do you really want to suffer the consequences? There's scripture. You kill the body of the temple. The temple of the spirit. It's bad. You don't just die. You're brought back to die again. And you burn for that because you stole a life or took a life that wasn't yours. And with that, I heard God whisper in my ear. I want to say it was the first time that it was just undoubtedly Him. He had spoken to my heart, but this was totally different. And I was so frustrated, and I was just like, I was really, really scrimping to try to hold on to just anything. Anything. And he whispered in my ear, and he said, Leia, if you go out like this is all you're going to know. And I was like, what? You mean they got the best of me? You mean this whole circumstance? You mean all these things that have happened, all the abuse, all the times that I was molested at night, all the sleepless nights that I stayed up protecting my sisters and fighting my brothers off, because once I got old enough to fight, I was going to fight. And that was just plain and simple. And now I'm like, what? You mean like they won? And a fire rose up inside of me that I was like, oh, hell nah. Like, I am not going to go out like this. Like, straight up. I'm like, I came too far. I fought too hard. You know, it was so much that I had to endure and go through and sacrifice to get here. And I'm like, no, I'm not going out like that. And I did want to know a life outside of that. I wanted to know a healthy relationship with someone, because my family wasn't that. And I wasn't allowed to have boyfriends because my brothers had claimed me and my sisters as possessions. And they would tell us, you know, you belong to us, so you can't look at other guys, you can't, you know, be with other people. So you really had this manipulation going on in your mind, and you really just, I mean, you didn't know. I mean, these were things like since I could, you know, first remember, which they say, you know, the earliest memories you record in your brain start at 3 years old. And I couldn't remember a time that there wasn't abuse going on or molestation going on or dark things happening. And my dad was the bishop of a Mormon church, and we were like the whole back pew family. Everything looked great on the outside. And then behind closed doors, it was absolutely horrendous. And I'm thankful that I was able to work on myself throughout the years since I left at 16 in order to be a healthy person, be safe to love, be a good friend, a loyal friend, an honest friend, to have integrity with what I do, and to be a good worker and appreciate my job and what I'm blessed to have. But backing up a little bit before that, my life consisted of taking care of my family. My dad had his mother living with us. She had suffered a stroke and it impaired her speech, and around the time that happened, she had a garden up in Pennsylvania, and it was very beautiful up there, and she had fallen in a hole and she had broken her ankle, and so she was not able to get around as much, and with the stroke, I mean, she needed to be taken care of. So he had brought her. Well, my uncle, which is my dad's younger brother, he was blind from an accident when he was 7 years old. He had a bully throw a brick, and it hit him in the temple and destroyed his life. He had to have surgeries and medication for seizures. It mutated his face. He had high fevers, and it mangled his teeth. He was disfigured. And people were scared of him, but I took care of him because I loved him, and I loved my grandma. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom with 6 kids, and I was the one to help her out. And she suffered from a lot of emotional distress, a lot of mental sickness. Looking back now, I mean, she did a lot by herself. My dad wasn't there to help her out, so I do see a lot of more of her frustration and more of the stress that she was under, which was different than what I was going through. But with that, I mean, my main objective was to protect my sisters, to keep them from having to experience what I had experienced. And I would pray to God and be like, God, please, I know I'm strong enough. God, just let it happen to me, because I know I can get through this, Father. Please, please. You know, just as much as you can divert, and as much as I could just get them to not go through or not experience. I mean, I'm just, and to have that strength, I'm not sure that I had it for myself. I could only express it as God given, because there was nothing in circumstances or in my life that would have given me that. I just had it, you know, and praying about it now, I know God was doing things in my life back then so that I could do this now and be able to talk about it and speak to it, and know that there are a lot of people out there that can relate to different types of dysfunction. And there wasn't drugs per se, but when your dad starts a cult and he's doing exorcisms, there's so many different angles of trauma and things that scarred me. I mean, just straight up, it just scarred me. So just to make sure I get back into the point that I was at. So at that pivotal point, fast forwarding back where we started, when I was 13 and I had this contemplation of my life, and the question was, what was I going to fight for? And knowing that if I surrendered my life then, which is what it would have been, I would have given up. It would, it was a form of giving up, that I would have had them win. They would have got the best of me. And that gave me enough to keep pushing. And then I had to contemplate, okay, what am I going to do with my life right now? And one more thing, because there's always that one thing that pushes you over the edge. And I almost left that part out, and that's very important to know what pushed me over the edge, what had me push into that level of value where I'm like, I don't have anything anymore. Because there was a lot of building up. I mean, as I was explaining, there was a lot of different abuse. My mom was very abusive to me. She wanted nothing to do with me, so it was a constant bashing and punishments and get out of my face, because I don't even want to see you. But my father, because of the cult that he did, a lot of his controlling was in brainwashing and making you believe things that didn't happen. Well, as I mentioned, I was molested and sexually abused growing up, and it goes back into my earliest memories, but I wasn't raped yet. I say yet because that did happen later in my life, but that hadn't happened. And my dad had tried to convince me that it did happen. It's kind of hard to talk about a little bit. I don't know why I talk about it all the time. But he had convinced me, or wanted to convince me. I shouldn't say he convinced me, because I didn't believe him. But he had told me that my brother had raped me. And when I was 8 years old, my mom explained to me that I was basically a piece of garbage, that I was trash, that nobody would want me, that I was used goods, and the only thing that I would have had to have given away, or the only thing that I had that somebody would have wanted from me, would have been my virginity, and I lost it, and now I was nothing. And I suffered with the idea of being garbage, being a piece of trash, when I didn't even have anything to do with that. And for 5 years, I felt like I was the lowest of the low, and like rejected, beyond rejected, because I couldn't even get accepted, but I was already rejected, and so it was hopelessness that started to set in. It was despair. It was like, wow, like I don't even have anything. And yet I still somehow believed that it wasn't true. And so when I was 13, I arranged to meet a guy that I met at school. Outside of my house, I ran away. I took my older sister with me, and we went and met this guy, and I ended up losing my virginity that night. Not in a good way either, but I needed to know the truth, and the only way for me to know the truth was to find out for myself. And now that I found out that I was a virgin, now I'm not. And I did it to myself. And I had to be responsible for that decision. And it just made me break, because I couldn't see how my dad could betray me when he should have been the one to protect me. And he had this whole story about taking me to the hospital, and they had me tested for things. And then the one thing that made him a liar, that is what had me doubt his words, was that he said that there was a pregnancy test done. And I was like, at 8 years old, there's no possible way I could have been pregnant. And that always had me think in my head, okay, something's not right. It doesn't make sense. And a lot of the stuff, that's how I learned the truth, was paying attention and being like, no, because God isn't a God of confusion. So when things are in that state, God isn't operating in that. He's not. And anyway, so with that, I was like, how am I going to live with myself now? like what I tried to do, what I was trying to be, you know, and helping my family and protecting my sisters and doing all of this and trying to have a life of my own, you know, and learn who I was, which, I mean, I'm still learning who I am. But just having an idea even, because I was basically just what I was doing. I was just the one to help out, and that was it. My face was, there was no, you know what I'm saying? Like there was no unique part of, oh, it's Leia, you know, kind of a thing. Even though I stuck out like a sore thumb, people remembered me. But again, back to the Tasmanian devil, like I left a mark. So anyway, with this now being something that I had on my hands is what had me push myself to the end. And I was like, God, how do I get past this now? I mean, even if I wanted to go and say it was everybody, it's not now. It was me too. But one of the things I always told myself was, I'd rather hear the truth and deal with the pain than hear a lie and go insane. Because there is no end to a lie, but there is freedom in truth. And that's how I began to heal and accept the decision that I had at 13 and contemplate this path that I'm going to tell you the story. And basically, not basically, this saved my life. Sorry. Okay, so now I knew the truth and I was able to just accept it and say, all right, look, I know my dad lied to me. I know he's my father, but he's not on my team. And I had to go into isolation. As I mentioned in a previous video, there's more I'm going to speak about that, but that is a very difficult, dimensional, reflective. I mean, there's so many different things that happen in isolation for me, that it wasn't always a bad thing, even though it didn't feel comfortable and it didn't always feel right. There was purpose in it. So I never saw it as a bad thing to take that time out or that time in to look into myself. And I always asked myself, why did I feel a certain way, and validate those feelings and to dig in deeper, and why did you act like that, and why are you upset, what's really bothering you, you know, and just digging to a point to where I could get an answer, because, you know, we bury things so far that we don't always take the time to try to dig it out, to be healthy and to express our feelings, even just validate them with ourselves, to say, golly, like, how do you feel right now, Leia? And I'm like, I don't know, you know, I know how I feel. You know, I'm angry. I'm upset. I'm torn. I'm broken. I feel fragile. I feel exposed. I feel vulnerable. I mean, I'm weak. I mean, I hate that feeling of weakness. And so this 13 years old, and I with God speaking into my ear about, you know, them taking me, the best of me, I decided to fight, to push forward. And then I kind of spent some time with, okay, what am I going to do with my life now? And I got kicked out of my dad's house. I had to stay with a family friend because I couldn't control myself. And I'm not controlled. I couldn't be controlled. You can't control me. And being in an environment with a cult where that's all they want is to control you, it was rough for me, to say the least. It was rough because I wasn't one of them. And I knew I wasn't. And I wasn't going to stop what I was doing to let them take me and be a part of it. And I fought from the beginning. But that's a whole other story. So God had told me, you know, Leia, what is it that you want? Because remember, I'm trying to find this purpose to my life now. I mean, I'm like, I could have died. I'm not dead. I get that I've, you know, accepted things from my life up to this point, and I've got a choice. I can change the path that I have by making the decisions to line up with where I see myself. Where do I see myself? And one of the things God had put on my heart was, Leia, what do you want? What do you want? Like, what is one of your, you know, desires? And I had collected smiley faces, and people that know me, that's my thing. That is like one of like my biggest things. And it was that I wanted to smile. I wanted to be happy. I wanted to know. I wanted to know what that looked like. I wanted to know, like, what it was to laugh. I mean, there were so many. I didn't even know how to laugh. I didn't even know, like, what my laugh sounded like. God told me, Leia, what if I told you that in order for you to have that, you had to give it away? And I was like, what? I don't get it. You mean for something that I want, if I had it, and you're telling me that I have it, and that's what I wanted, why would I give it away? It doesn't even make any sense, right? And then I'm like, okay. And he's like, well, Leia, since that's what you want, he's like, what if you have, in order to get a smile, you have to give it away. In order to be happy, you have to give that away. And I was like, all right. I mean, it's worth a shot. What do I got to lose? I didn't have anything to lose. I had nothing. So my dad had taken us to Cracker Barrel. I had met up with them, and I'm not one to ask for things. It's very hard for me to ask for things. But I had asked him for these smiley beads that they had at the gift shop, that they was like build your own necklace or whatever. And he bought me all they had. And I took those, and I had found some Smiley iron-on patches. So I put them on my backpack, put them on the sleeves, and I had them on the front pocket. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this. Like, I'm gonna sport this. I'm gonna learn how to smile. I'm gonna learn how to be that for other people. And because of the circumstances with this boy that I met up with at 13, I was transferred into another school. So new school, new place of living. I've got a new outlook that I'm trying to see in my life. So in essence, I really got to start over. My name, my mom had changed when I was born. So my parents had got divorced during this time too. And so I was given my birth name, which is my name now, Leia Bush. And I was really proud about that because it meant something. A name meant something. It gave me what I thought was identity. Which it's only a portion, but that's another story. So I decided that I was going to use that tool of these smiley faces to impact other people. And I went to this new school, and, of course, I don't know anybody because it's a whole other district. And I go up to people that were having a bad day or seemed bummed out or just struggling, because some of these kids, I mean, they didn't have a voice at home, and they didn't have, the attention or the love that some of us are privileged to have, and so I would go and drop a bead and be like, hey, you know what? I see you. Like, I just acknowledging them, and I'd be like, look, I see you. It doesn't, I know you're going through some stuff. I was like, you don't even have to tell me. You don't have to open up. I was like, I just want to let you know that it's going to be okay. And I would just smile and just, it's going to be okay. And then I'd walk away. And then, I mean, I did that the whole year. And kids that were struggling with homework and subjects that I was good at. Hey, you know what? Here's a bead. It's going to be okay. I can help you. Hey, we can do this together. Like, we got this. Like, I can teach you. I understand. I know you can learn this. And just speaking up into their situation and lifting them up and being encouraging to say, that, we're not always able to open up to each other as much as other people. And that's okay. It's okay. Because, I mean, sometimes, you have to deal with things and it's not where you can tell people. But other times, I mean, it's good to talk about things because you have a voice. And you deserve to be heard, and your feelings deserve to be validated. And so anyway, and during the school year was so hard for me. I was so upset with things in my life, and I was still fighting battles of darkness in myself. I was still struggling to keep this face that was fake at the time. It was fake. I didn't have it, but I wanted it. So God said, give it away. So I did. And people hated me because they said, who's that happy? Like, nobody's that happy. Like, I hate you. Like, get away from me. And I became a cast out because I was too happy at moments that I wanted to die. That I wanted to die. And thank God for friends, because I had a few good ones then that would come find me, and I would just go break down, and I go find a dark corner, and I would just lose it. And I'm just like, I don't know if I can keep doing this. Like, I don't know if I have it in me to keep doing this. And they would come over and do what I did for them, for me. Leia, it's going to be okay. You know, I don't need to know what's going on. Or I had one friend of mine, his name was Servando, and he would just sit next to me. And I would have my head in between my knees, and I'm just crouched on the floor, and he would just sit there. And just his presence, he didn't have to say anything, just so I wasn't there by myself, that I had somebody in it with me. And it helped me get through, and I appreciate that. I loved him for that. And anyway, at the end of the school year, I was super frustrated. Super frustrated. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm like, I think I'm ready to give up on this idea. I think I'm really ready to just, you know, forget it. Just forget it. You know, maybe it's not for me. Maybe I shouldn't have it. Maybe I don't deserve it. You know, maybe I'm not worthy to have it. Like, I don't understand what you got to do to get it. But if I'm trying, I'm fighting. I mean, I don't have it. I don't, you know what I mean? I don't know what else to do. And God put on my heart, and he was like, Leia, look around you. And I started looking around at the kids in the school, and I saw the beads that I gave out. I saw them on keychains and bracelets and necklaces, and I was like, what? Like in shoelaces and stuff. It was super cool. And God's like, look, like, there was an impact. Maybe you didn't feel it. He's like, but you made an impact. Like, there's a piece of you with them. You did something in their life that made a difference. That smile that you had to fight to get, you shared it and you gave it so that somebody else could have it and share that moment. And that saved my life, because I did realize that God was right. That what we want for ourselves, to have it, we do have to give it away. That if we want love, then we have to give love away. If we want friendship, then we have to give friendship away. If we want a relationship, then we have to give that relationship away. Give all we have to put in it. That we have to give that smile to get it. That we have to give generously to those, because God tells us to give to those who ask, to help those in need, to reach out, and God will do that for you, because that's his heart. His heart is a giving heart. That's why it's God loved the world so much that he gave. He gave, but he loved first. And I just want to let you know that there is still room in your life to give. Even if it's just your words or your time or your energy or your talents or your gifts or just a thought or an acknowledgement or telling someone, hey, I see you, and smile. There was one thing that I saw. It was a wallpaper, and it was talking about how they were gonna take their life, but that they were gonna walk to this bridge and jump off the bridge, but that if anyone on this walk had smiled at them, that they wouldn't do it. And they ended up jumping. And I think about that a lot, because it was a lot about my own life. That what if your smile could save someone's life? What if your kind word gave them hope that there are people out there that care, and that there are still good things out in the world that are worth living for, that are worth, going through the tough times, because when we come out of it, we're stronger, and we're more wise, and we're tougher, and we grow and we learn, and we're able to share that with one another. And that's something that's so important for us to have. And I want you to know that God wants that relationship with you. He wants to give you everything so that you can have more, because he tells you he comes that you might have life, and life more abundantly, and that he didn't send Jesus, his son, to condemn the world, but that through him the world might be saved. And that salvation includes your feelings and your emotions and things that happen supernaturally. Because in order for that shift to happen in me, I had to step out in faith, believing that, okay, I can try something and make something happen, and God can bring it to fruition. He can manifest it in my life. I just have to trust him. And I want to just tell you that God is the only person that will never fail you. People are created to fail. God won't fail you. And I'm living proof, and my testimony serves that if you trust that what he has in you will work, because you're allowing it to work, he'll show you. And before I end this video, I want to let you know that from that moment on, I walked in that level of understanding that I had to give first in order to get. And when I was in my senior year in high school, I followed this same principle, just in different levels. Because as I matured, I figured I was able to get into deeper levels of people and try to help with what I've been through, to help give hope, to say, look, if I can do it, you can do it. And if I can see something bigger, then there's something bigger for you. And there was a girl that I loved her artwork, and she was a good friend of mine. And she would disappear, and I would go find her. And sometimes I'd find her, sometimes I wouldn't. But when I would see her again, I would tell her, hey, I've been looking for you. Like, where have you been? Like, oh my goodness. Like, what have you been drawing? Like, talk to me. Like, what's up, man? And I didn't really think anything of it, because I really just enjoyed her as a friend. That I had very few of. Real friends are hard to find, but a few good ones are priceless. But she had come up to me at the end of the school year, and we were standing in the breezeway, and the school that I had went to, it was very open, and there was just sections of buildings, and so everything was on the outside, and we called them wings. So we were in the third wing, and I was in the main hallway, and she was walking towards me, and then she'd stop. And then I kind of did like the whole, okay. And I just stood there, like something told me to just like wait, right? And I waited, and she would walk a little bit, and then she'd stop, and then she'd turn around, and then she'd take a step going the other way. And then I'm like, kind of, what's going on? Like, this seems a little weird, right? And then she'd turn around, and she would walk a few steps closer, and then she'd turn around, and I just waited. And then she turned around, and she got close enough I could see her face, and her eyes were just welled up with tears, and her face, she was crying. And I'm like, looking at her like, are you okay? And she grabs my hands, and she looks me in the eye, and she goes, Leah, I want you to know that you saved my life. And I just stood there like dumbfounded, like, and she gave me a hug, and I was speechless. And she stepped back, and she smiled at me, and she left. And I never saw her again. And God told me when he brought this, there's been a lot of things in reflection he's brought back into light in my life. And he told me, Leah, it's like the story of the 10 lepers. He's like, God healed 10, but only one came back to thank him. And he said, I just want you to know to keep doing what you're doing, because you are making a difference in someone's life. And the idea of me saving a life was so, like, I just didn't think that would have ever been me, that I could do that, because it seemed like a surgeon's, job, or a doctor, but God says there's so many different levels of connections that He gives us to operate within each other. And the ones that He connects you with are purposeful. And if God sent me to her to save her life, then I saved her children's mother. I saved her parents' daughter. I saved someone's sister, someone's aunt, you know what I mean? Somebody. And I want you to know that that's you. That you are here to save lives. And you have saving lives. Even if it's just saving your own life. But you have the impact to save people's lives. And I want you to trust that God will show you how. Because that's what we're here for. We're here to save each other. Not just in our souls and our spirits, but for eternity. Not just in our emotions and our life, but for eternity. That God will send you to get those that are His. It's the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. Just trust Him.